And we're live. So, welcome to another episode of An American Werewolf in New Jersey podcast. And welcome to another episode of Something Shitty This Way Comes. Before I get it going tonight with the movie I want to review, I want to mention that today, one of the more underrated directors in Hollywood, but a director who definitely influenced my childhood, passed away today. And that man's name is Richard Donner. Richard Donner passed away today at the age of 91. He certainly seemed to have lived a very full life. And the movies that he brought to the silver screen, have left an enormous impact on cinema. I mentioned last week when we were talking about Jaws that I wasn't quite old enough to have seen Jaws in the cinema. Probably the first summer blockbuster I remember was Star Wars. But I believe the very next year, Richard Donner took over the screen by bringing this man, Christopher Lee Reeve, to life as Superman. Just an amazing interpretation. We had never seen anything like that before. Fantastic special effects, good story, great performance now by the late Christopher Lee Reeve. We certainly miss him. That movie was everything. I think I had spoken in another podcast when we were doing Big Fish, and I talked about Tim Burton's Batman and that sort of being the first. But I realized that I misspoke because almost 10 years before that, Richard Donner had brought Superman to life. And for many people, those are still the best Superman movies, the ones that Donner and Christopher Reeve brought to the screen. He also brought a fantastic movie called The Goonies, which it's just a fun movie. It's not a movie as I get older that I repeatedly want to watch or anything like that. It doesn't hold over and it doesn't have that same kind of impact, but it's still a fantastic movie. And anyone who watches it for the first time is going to enjoy it a great deal. He also brought the character of Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh, the characters, to the screen for Lethal Weapon. And this is about 10 years after Superman, and my tastes had started to solidify a bit more, definitely into the more edgy and hardcore action that I appreciate today. And to this day, these movies definitely hold up. I love watching Lethal Weapon. Unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say I don't own them. I don't have personal copies, hard copies of them, but I'm going to have to remedy that real soon. He also more recently brought together Bruce Willis and a fantastic Mos Def in an amazing performance, an amazing movie called 16 Blocks. Next level performances by both of these guys and everybody in it. This is just a fantastic movie, and I think right now it's on HBO Max, as are the Lethal Weapon movies. I'm not sure about Superman; they might be also. All of these movies right now might be on HBO Max. So if you get a chance, turn on some HBO and give yourself some opportunity for fun with these fantastic movies. Superman, Goonies, Lethal Weapon, 16 Blocks, all of them, I believe, right now are on HBO Max. He also brought to the screen a movie I really didn't enjoy, and I'm not putting him down or the movie down. I mean, that would be in poor taste. But that movie is called The Omen, and being predominantly a podcast that covers horror movies, I feel I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. For various reasons that I've already discussed in other episodes, I don't feel that it holds up. But I know that I'm in the vast mind. I'm in a very small minority of people who feel that way. To many people, this is one of the most frightening movies of all time, probably in the top 10 or top 20 of all time. And so, again, Richard Donner today, passing away at the age of 91. Hopefully, we wish him to rest in peace. And that's all I wanted to say. So with that in mind, let's get it going with the Okay, so we can get it going in a more standard format now that we've talked about Richard Donner, and thankfully the wave is going to break with the Star Wars prequels because we've finally gotten to Revenge of the Sith, which I believe came out in 2005, written and directed again by Lucas, who has just made us suffer unnecessarily with these horrific movies. I'm sure he means well, but they're just bad. I'm not going to spend an enormous amount of time necessarily talking about this movie, but I'll point out some things because I've already gone into two movies. So this is the final movie. This is the movie where Anakin Skywalker becomes Vader. The Republic falls. Chancellor Palpatine becomes the Emperor, and basically it's a real bummer of a movie. I mean, the story itself is just a bummer. But some of the things, I did actually watch it a couple of days ago in preparation for this episode because I want to keep my comments accurate, and I don't want to make generalizations. One of the things that I considered, and so I'd like you to consider it also, is that they've made a casting error. Lucas, or the casting director, made an error here in that he did not cast Christopher Lee as Chancellor Palpatine. Christopher Lee should have been Palpatine, and for some reason, I mean, he wasn't. He plays Count Dooku, who we see in the second movie, Attack of the Clones, is doing the Spider-Man kind of Jedi thing, which we know at this age, Christopher Lee is probably close. He's in his 80s. His gravitas is completely being, tossed aside to make him this sort of action villain with, again, no background. This is the man who should have been Palpatine. This is a man who knows how to play an evil bastard. And we're going to be talking about him again on Wednesday. When we start to talk about the Hammer films. And this man would understand the role inside and out. I can't figure out why. I mean, we already know, even by that time's standards, 2000, 2003, we know he still knows how to play a much more prominent role by what we see in Lord of the Rings. He's Saruman. And Saruman is an evil, double-dealing bastard. But for some reason, they've got him doing all kinds of Olympic gymnastics, and he's battling CGI characters and doing all these sorts of things. And this annoying bastard, I don't even know who this is, really. I didn't take the time to look him up because why isn't Christopher Lee doing the manipulation? Why isn't Christopher Lee maneuvering Hayden Christensen, Anakin Skywalker, to the dark side? Why isn't he pulling the wool over, the Jedi's eyes, over the Republic's eyes? It should be this man. This guy should have been the Chancellor Palpatine, and going on to become the Emperor. I'm not necessarily caught up in physical characteristics I mean, at this point, I would, do some. Well, this would have helped the movie a lot. I think he has a lot more gravitas, a lot more presence, and unfortunately, it just kind of goes to waste here. Now, this movie is set 3 years after the end of the Attack of the Clones. Largely, there's some last gasps going on, but it looks like the Separatists are winning, if I'm not mistaken. I'm introduced to a character named General Grievous, and I'll be honest, I don't care about General Grievous because I don't know anything about General Grievous. I have the distinct impression that this is a character who is around solely for the purpose of people who have read the books or the graphic novels. There is no backstory on this guy. I'm supposed to accept that he's one of the leaders of the Separatists, even though I haven't seen him in any of the previous movies, The Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones. There's been no mention of General Grievous, but somehow I'm supposed to accept him as this prominent Separatist leader under the influence of Count Dooku and this annoying bastard, the Emperor, or the Chancellor Palpatine, as he continues to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. Now, one of the questions I have, and it is a criticism, is that we all know walking into the movie, and you should understand, I actually went to see this on a midnight premiere. I had never gone to a midnight premiere of a Star Wars movie before. I had a really difficult time staying awake because by the time it was over, it was almost 3:00 in the morning. But I went to see it. But what I can't figure out, again, this is another movie that I wanted it to do well. Just like the other two movies, you want it to do well, but it's not good. It's not a good movie. And one of the questions as I was watching it this time is that, okay, you understand going in. Back in 2005, 16 years ago, I understood going in that this is not going to have a happy ending. You're not going to have a happy ending. You understand, the viewer, from the first movie, that Chancellor Palpatine is the Emperor. He's the Sith Lord. So why, in the third movie, are we still having these long, drawn-out action sequences starting out with the kidnapping of Palpatine? Like, why is that necessary? Especially if you all know it's a scam. There should be, it's foolish, and it's a waste of the first 20 minutes of the film. They send in Obi-Wan and Anakin to rescue Palpatine, who's being kidnapped, but you already know it's a scam. You're in the third movie by now. Let's move on. It's just a complete waste of time. One of the characters that I really came to enjoy, actually, in this trilogy is Mace Windu. Played very well by Samuel Jackson. He gets a bit more of a prominent role, and unfortunately he dies in this movie. But this is a character I would have liked to have seen a lot more backstory on. I shouldn't have had to wait, or none of us should have to have waited until the Clone Wars came out, and then you start to get a little bit of backstory. And even then, it's really not all that much. He's one of the only people, I think, that even of the Jedi that even remotely have their feet on the concrete, not trusting Anakin, not trusting the Senator. I suppose you could say the same about Obi-Wan, but maybe it's because of the fact that Mace Windu is not a character who addresses things in a passive-aggressive way. He just kind of speaks his mind. He's much more plain-spoken than many of the other Jedi. And you appreciate that because it's just such a missing quality. And unfortunately, by the time you really start to like him, he has this big confrontation with Palpatine, he gets killed. And he gets killed by Anakin Skywalker as he discovers, as Palpatine reveals that he's the Sith Lord to Anakin. Anakin reports it to the Jedi. Mace Windu goes there to confront him. And unfortunately, Anakin cuts him down because, of course, Anakin, the whole premise of this is that, Anakin is having a personality crisis or, identity crisis, and he can't figure out who he is. So he ends up going on to become the Sith Lord because he believes that Padme, who is now his wife of 3 years and is pregnant with their children, is going to die. Never realizing that, he's sort of completing a self-fulfilling prophecy. He's sort of making all the things that he's dreaming about coming to pass. I will say this, it's a halfway decent performance in this movie by Natalie Portman, and Lord Almighty, she is gorgeous in this movie. I don't know if she was actually pregnant, but if you had told me that she was actually glowing, I wouldn't have had any trouble disbelieving that at all. She was just stunningly beautiful. And yeah, again, not a bad performance. Now, one of the things that goes on in this movie is that, they want to send Anakin Skywalker in to spy on the senator, spy on Palpatine. Palpatine requests Anakin to be his personal liaison to the Jedi. And they're playing this passive-aggressive thing where, they want Anakin to spy on Palpatine instead of just saying no, like, we don't want you two together. Like, putting you two together is a bad idea. Instead, they're still, talking in metaphors and riddles and not getting anything done, really, and just completely having the wool pulled over their eyes while they, lecture other people about, what they should or should not be doing. Yeah, it's not good. Order 66 comes to pass. You have, from the 2005 perspective, no idea what Order 66 is. There's no backstory on Order 66. You don't know anything about the fact that all of the clones have a chip implanted in their heads. There's no reveal about that at all. It's just execute Order 66, and yeah. That's about all that there is. It's they flip, they kill all the Jedi. I got the impression that this entire trilogy almost was based on people who read the graphic novels and the books, because we were told that's where Lucas discovered that there might still be an audience for another trilogy, but he didn't really make it for anybody who didn't read the books or the graphic novels, which was me. And I still haven't read the graphic novels, and I'm not going to read the graphic novels, and I'm not going to read the books. So I don't know why I should like his movie. And I don't. Let's see. I mean, what else is there? Real quick, R2, there's half a second where R2's flying with Anakin after he becomes, or he starts to become a Sith, and you think, okay, that's kind of cool. R2 is on the dark side for about 5 minutes, which is kind of cool. The last 30 minutes are just an incessant action, just never-ending action between, Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then you've got Yoda and Palpatine. And yeah, it's just 30 unnecessary minutes because you already know what the ending is. So I don't know why this had to happen at all. Here's something I'd like you to consider, and I'm almost at the end of this episode because it's been 3 movies and I'm tired of talking about it. Here's a consideration. Instead of a long, drawn-out 20-minute battle with all sorts of CGI and, floating, they're, going along on these conveyor belts on this, hellish sort of planet, the action really it's not that good. What if instead of that, you had Kenobi simply just cut Anakin down instantly, much like he did in Rebels to Darth Maul? What if we just had Kenobi is king, and he's not fucking around with this punk who never listened to him anyway, and he just cuts Anakin down and saves us all 20 minutes of unnecessary action? Huh? What do you think? I think it works. when I saw the build up and, well, going back to, I mean, the Phantom Menace and the initial battle between Kenobi and Maul, then built up all the way through the Clone Wars and then Rebels, where Maul is making this, tremendous, sort of return. And then to have that final battle between he and Kenobi just cuts him down in a second. Just hammers him. I mean, that's the extent of it right there. I mean, why couldn't he have done that with Anakin? I mean, that would have been much more succinct, much more definitive. Maybe, 30, 20 or so odd years later, whatever, when we get to A New Hope, then okay, Vader's much more powerful or whatever, and he's the same age that Kenobi is now, and now Kenobi's older and he doesn't have the same amount of power, and okay, so he kills Kenobi. Or I think Kenobi just turns off his lightsaber, if I'm not mistaken. But why couldn't we have done it that way instead of wasting 30 minutes? I tell you what, here's another thing. Vader is a buffoon. Again, even now, he creates a self-fulfilling prophecy that brings him exactly where he doesn't want to be. He's still being played by Palpatine because Padme, he's being told that he killed Padme. Yoda is a buffoon. He has perhaps the most understated line in the entire movie. Failed, I have. You think? You've been failing this entire time. So, I mean, I don't see what the highlight is about this movie. And I'll say one more thing. And I'm completely serious about this. This movie ends on a complete bummer. Kenobi, delivers the two children. He goes to protect Luke. He goes into hiding. Yoda goes into hiding. Vader becomes Vader, and Palpatine becomes the Emperor, and he forms the Empire out of the Republic, and all these different things. It's like the most depressing endings in the, of all the movies, maybe. But for some reason, when it ends, they still launch into that stupid fucking music. I mean, how tone deaf is that? Can't you just, have have music that meets the tone of the story? Wouldn't that work better? But after every movie, no matter what happens, you have to hear it. I mean, it's been, 46 years? You can't come up with any new music? What the fuck? At Star Wars, just, shut up and take what we give you and like it. For fuck's sake. All right. That's enough. I'm annoyed just even talking about this. Okay. Avoid these movies if you can. If you must, I suppose you could watch this one only because, I'm trying to filter in Favreau and Filoni and trying to see if these movies become necessary in some sort of way. I'll leave it up to you. The Clone Wars takes place between episodes 2 and 3. And actually, the Clone Wars goes all the way through the third movie and finally ends a little bit past the end of the third movie, and it's phenomenal series. And then you've got Rebels after that, and now I'm actually enjoying that new series, The Bad Batch. But these movies, I mean, if you wanted to watch them, you can. What happened to me last year when I was in lockdown overseas, Disney Plus had just came out, so I started with episode 2. I started with Attack of the Clones, and I went through chronologically everything. Every single episode of every series, all the way to episode 9, which is a whole that trilogy is a whole other shit show. And so I watched them for those purposes. I don't know, on their own, these movies don't stand up. None of these movies stand up. And anybody, yeah, it's just idiotic to even say so, in my opinion. Okay, so avoid them. Yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't waste my time unless you're going through the whole chronology, which takes a while, and hopefully there won't be any more lockdowns, so you won't have the time for that. And you'll get outside and do things, like you should be doing. Okay, that's it for that. We'll be back on Wednesday when we talk about Christopher Lee being appropriately used as we begin the Hammer Time subthread. I'm really excited about Hammer Time. We're going to be talking finally about Hammer films and their impact and influence in horror. It was a great time in the 50s, about a 20-year span, the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And we're going to start with one of their biggest films starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, 1958's Horror of Dracula. I can't wait for Hammer Time on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we're coming at you really hard with a movie I've wanted to cover for a long time, 1987's Angel Heart. This will be the first voodoo movie that I've covered, but I think it's actually the best of the voodoo movies. There aren't many out there, but this is a top one. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Okay, like this video. Subscribe if you think it's worthy, and we'll see you in a couple of days for Hammer Time.